Kura removing companion quests from Wuthering Waves was the worst narrative decision they've made, and it's actively ruining the overall main quest experience. Okay, I said it. I've honestly been putting off saying this for months. Ever since 2.6 came out, I felt pretty solid about this, but I wanted to wait and see if things would change over time. A lot of people are loving 3.0, and genuinely, I'm happy for you. No one should take away from your experience of the game. But today, I want to talk about something that's been bothering me for a while, and why removing companion quests has quietly damaged the way the main story works. But before I get into the critique, let me sing Wu's praises first. They've massively improved the cinematic storytelling, the visuals, the cuts, the camera movement. Every scene felt more expressive. I swear Lene had a new expression or emote every other cut, and that was genuinely great to see. The soundtrack was also pretty strong, especially during the bike riding sections and boss fights. If you're someone who mainly enjoys spectacle vibes, cool characters, I honestly think you'll have very little issue with 3.0, especially if you're a big Lene fan. But hear me out. What if you were a big fan of Chisa and really connected with her story in 2.8? Surely once we finally reach La Haroi, we'd get to continue her arc, or at least meaningfully acknowledge it, right? Well, sorry, you get about 30 seconds of optional dialogue and the rest happens off screen. Like, this feels like a Honkai Star Rail Duke Inferno moment, and before anyone says cap, you're being impatient, it's only Act 1. No, I'm sorry, that argument doesn't really hold up. Chisa was in La Haroi for days before Rover even arrived. They could have easily given us a 30-second or 1-minute cutscene showing what she was doing during that time, but they didn't, because she wasn't a priority anymore. So I completely understand why a lot of people felt screwed over by how Chisa was handled in 3.0. And this is the undeniable consequence of shoehorning character companion quests into the main bread and butter of the main story. Here's the real problem. We all know and accept that 2.8 was essentially a Chisa-focused quest, with the world building and plot largely centered around her. A lot of people really enjoyed that, and there's nothing inherently wrong with players connecting more to characters than to abstract story concepts. The issue is that Kuro has taken this approach to an absolute extreme. When character stories become the focus of the main story, the surrounding plot starts to feel hollow. There simply isn't enough time to meaningfully expand on concepts that could make the world itself more intriguing to the players. And when you do this, then immediately move on to the next patch because a new character is more important, you start creating disgruntled players. Players who emotionally invested only to feel like that investment was discarded the moment someone new took priority. Character stories should support the main story. They should be additive. It shouldn't be something that replaces the entire thing. If you're someone who's purely character driven, this probably doesn't bother you too much. And to be fair, in a gacha game, that's a huge portion of the target audience. But for players who care about the continuity, payoff, this approach slowly erodes the quality of story over time. I genuinely believe the main story would better when companion quests were separate. Carlotta's and Cantarella's companion quests are perfect examples of this. Those arcs were incredible because they gave you space to focus entirely on the character without rushing plot progression or banner marketing at the exact same time. Even Encore's companion quest still sticks with me. I was literally bawling my eyes out by the end of it. And that's because the quests earned their intimacy. You spent an hour or more in a quest tailored specifically to that character, usually after the main story had already done its job. By that time, the emotional payoff hit. You'd built enough rapport for it to feel justified, and that is the difference. Companion quests let character stories breathe. Folding them into the main story turns them into temporary spotlights, which are just completely disposable the moment a banner changes. This narrative shift really started around 2.4. Both halves together totaled around 3 hours. Lupa was clearly the central focus, but there were still strong ties to Cartathea, and the second half introduced major Fraxidus lore. The broader world building was actually handled pretty well, I thought. but even then, you could start to feel the strain in some way. The story would have benefited massively from more direct interaction with Augusta and Yuno. It felt genuinely strange to me to have such serious conflicts and events happening in Septimon only to barely speak to Augusta at all. Well, not at all, really. Then in 2.6, we see the problem flip in the reverse. Looper could have very easily fit into the hunt and combat sections. You mean to tell me you're going to remove the wolf girl from her pack and she doesn't join the hunt? That was one of the more alarming moments for me, narratively speaking, and the reason is obvious. Giving Looper that screen time would have taken focus away from Augusta and Yuno's story. Once Looper's arc was completed in 2.4, it was like she stopped mattering. But good writing doesn't mean characters only exist to resolve their own arcs. Strong stories come from characters continuing to shape the world around them even after their personal conflict is resolved. That's what makes a world feel alive. The second half of 2.6 really solidified for me how the greater world building started to take a hit. A lot of people felt Yuno's section was a filler arc, and even though it does progress the main plot, that sentiment alone is concerning, is it not? Main story quests should never feel like filler. The chaos was introduced in a vague way that it felt like it should have been a major concept going forward, but it was never deeply explored. Instead, it became a convenient plot device to funnel us into Yuno's character struggles, rather than something that truly mattered to the world itself. And that really bothered me afterwards. You can go see my 2.6 story review for that one. The writing has been on the wall for a while now, and I've tried to point it out delicately for months, but now it's reached a point where I genuinely think it's starting to decay the potential of 3.0. Again, if you enjoyed the story, that's great. I did too. I liked it when I wasn't thinking too deeply about it. It's like watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. If you just enjoy the spectacle, you'll have a great time, but the more you stop and ask questions, the more the cracks start to show. So let's talk about 3.0 specifically, because I've got some actual numbers to throw at you. 3.0 is supposed to be our introduction to Laharoy, a research facility and academy that should massively expand what we know about Solaris 3 and the world around us. Surely this new area would be the focus of the introduction patch, right? Surely we'd learn about the students, the professors, the warrior tribe, the history of the facility and how it operates. No, that doesn't happen, because we spend 71% of the 3.0 main quest with Lene. I'm not kidding, like 70, I'm not exaggerating. Out of roughly 3 hours, 128 minutes are spent almost exclusively with her. No other future playable characters, just Lene and NPCs. And don't get me wrong, the very introduction was pretty cool. It was incredible. The Void Worm attack was a fantastic opening and visually stunning. But the constant effort to shoehorn Lene into every major story beat started to feel excessive. Almost comical at one point. About an hour in, we're finally left on our own. We can explore more of the facility, and we ended up meeting Morny, which is honestly one of the better parts of the patch. Rover's flashbacks looked amazing, and the hints about Morny's past were genuinely interesting. We finally get real world building, political tension between the academics, they're divided, there's distrust between them and the Royers and their calculations. There's a solar ceremony. Morny talks about the Heliotic Six and she'll go and like consult with them, and for the first time I'm like, okay, this is where the story finally starts like breathing on its own. And it's ironic that it only happens when Lene isn't around. But guess what? Disaster strikes, alarms go, sirens, void storms, and guess who is the reason everything is going tits up? It's Lene. We barely get 30 minutes of meaningful world building before we're dragged straight back into Lene's personal plot. Like, it's genuinely like comical. Anytime Lene comes back, the world building ends. The way Hyvatia was handled really kind of highlights this issue. We're told it's incredibly important, but the story never actually explains why in a way that feels grounded. If we'd spent more time understanding how the Space Trek Collective operates, how the Exostrider functions, or why Hyvatia's stability truly matters, the stakes would have hit much harder. Instead, we're expected to accept it at face value, because the plot needs Linnae to struggle, and that's like a reoccurring problem. The Hyvatia incident isn't designed to expand the world, it's designed to create an individual internal conflict for Linnae. Imagine if Linnae wasn't the cause of the malfunction. Imagine if the Academy had to investigate why it happened. We'd naturally learn more about the system, the facility, and the broader implications, and Linnae could still be part of that story. But instead, the entire plot has to bend around her. Can you honestly tell me right now what exactly Hyvatia does, how it does it, and why it's necessary? If you can, do you think the main quest did a good job at communicating that to the audience? Or was it more important to get Linnae's screen time? This part of the quest genuinely had me puzzled. Do you have the option to click for more info on Hyvatia? Because the game won't communicate this to you directly, and it reads this. Hyvatia is a Space Trek Collective's first detection array built at Sundermere to monitor and stabilize the reactor drive's state in real time. Okay, it'd be cool if we knew more about Sundermere and the reactor drive and what that really means. Okay, the Research Institute implanted the Exostrider's space-time error correction module runtime into Hyvatia's core, allowing Hyvatia to adjust the Exostrider's orbit. How big is the Exostrider? It sounds like it's planetarily big. And it's or in space, okay? It'll be great to know more information about this. And detect hidden spaceborne threats with high precision. Therefore, Hyvatia possesses sufficient computational power to predict the reactor's drive rotation. Hyvatia's core function is to detect abnormal or dangerous energy fluctuations, perform immediate emergency calibrations, and feed this data back to the drive to ensure stable operation. I feel like this would have hit way harder if we had any semblance of information about the Exostrider and how it operates, but up until this point, we're left completely in the dark. We're left in the dark about the Exostrider, the student academy life, about the Space Trek Collective's mission, but we're supposed to nod and say yes to Hyvatia and accept how it works, then care when it starts going haywire? The stakes would have felt so much more justified if we actually truly knew why this would be a bad thing, if we had a bigger picture of how it operates. Anything that seems like it would be interesting or important in this patch is continuously sidelined to feed us more Linnae backstory. Even the Void Worm situation feels too convenient. This is a major research institute focused on void phenomena, yet it needs Rover and Linnae to handle a threat that should realistically be routine for these people or easy for them to solve. Everything exists to prop up her in a spotlight, and I genuinely think this is why there are a lot of people that have mixed feelings on 3.0. If you're a Linnae fan, you probably love it. She dominates most of this quest, 71% of it to be in fact. If you're a Chisa fan, you were likely disappointed. And if you're someone like me who enjoys the bigger sci-fi picture, the politics, the systems, it probably felt visually great but lacking in some kind of substance. But now that Rover is enrolled and Linnae is technically a first year again, I hope the second half of Act 2 slows down and actually lets us experience Academy life. But honestly, I'm worried we'll just repeat the pattern. 70% focus on character and 30 minutes of actual world progression. 3.0 honestly made me appreciate 2.0's introduction way more. In Act 1 of 2.0, Carlotta appeared for only 4% of the runtime. Instead, the focus was on Renacita itself, its people, history, conflicts, all that sort of good stuff that makes it feel alive. We met multiple characters early, saw how they interacted, learned their values, and understood the city's power structures within the first hour. Brent and the troop take us to Renacita. We immediately come across the Order and see how they treat a portion of their citizens and already leave us with a feeling of sussiness of their motives. We meet Cristoforo, who says he's a playwright using the Fool's Pilgrimage as inspiration. It serves as the perfect opportunity to part with some exposition. We immediately learn about the initial sentiments of the Raganaci, that they revered the Sentinel, what the Carnival meant to them, the behaviors of the Sentinel. It's only been 30 minutes into the story. We end up in the city, greeted by the Order. We come to quickly understand how strict and disciplined they are, and their devotion to the Sentinel. Their intentions are clear and obvious to the players. Phoebe then takes us around the city and starts giving us more exposition about the Sentinel, echoes, and the values the people hold. She even tells us about how Renacito was founded. Then we meet Zanny, who takes us around the cool spots of the city. We even eat pizza, while at the same time we learn that the Montellis are super important and actually loaded with cash and mega influence. There were a lot of people who think the first act of 2.0 was slow, and I'd agree to an extent it was moderately paced, but I really do think they did a phenomenal job of setting the scene, giving you all the information you need to quickly set up motives, and importantly, introduce us to 4 playable characters in the first hour of the story, including one of the main future villains. Characters like Zanny and Phoebe weren't even on banner yet, and people still loved them interacting together the whole time. That's proof that characters don't need to dominate the story to be compelling. Comparing Act 1 of 2.0 to 3.0, the difference is overwhelming. 3.0's pacing is breakneck, with very little meaningful exposition, motives, and all that stuff. The context is completely glossed over. Since 2.4, it feels like Kuro has become hesitant to let characters meaningfully interact unless they're the focus of the current act. Outside of that, they become background noises, or gimmicks, like the coffee scene in 2.8. And I know what some people are going to say to this. Cap, just explore more, read the books, talk to the NPCs, listen to what they say, the lore is there if you want it, and look for it. Here's the problem with that. The main story is the only quest every single player is guaranteed to see. NPC dialogues, books, they're all optional and easily missed items. If crucial world building is locked behind optional content, then the game is literally failing to communicate its own story to most of its audience. Exploration lore, or learning lore through exploring and books and whatever, has no urgency. It's not tied to immediate stakes. It becomes passive information instead of something emotionally meaningful in the moment. I'm sorry, I really don't think being told lore means the same as experiencing it through a main story atmosphere. It's like a character can tell me their past, but I would feel more connected if you showed me it instead, or let me directly experience it in some way with immediate stakes at hand. And that's a fundamental design flaw. I really don't mean to be that person to make comparisons to Genshin, but I really can't help myself here, okay? But isn't that exactly what Genshin did for so many years? The only way you could get the bigger lore was through books and NPCs, and lore channels for Genshin literally were popular because nobody wanted to bother to read it themselves throughout the world. It's baffling. And then the developers literally had to apologize and completely change how they deliver story because they realized it was difficult to write. They couldn't guarantee a good story with information not everybody had read and understood from books. I don't want Wuthering Waves to fall to the same fate. And that's why I truly believe removing companion quests is actively damaging the main story's narrative health. I still enjoy Wuthering Waves, I still enjoy the spectacle. I'm just starting to care less about the bigger picture because it feels like the game doesn't want that to be the focus anymore either. And honestly, I hope I'm proven massively wrong in the second act, because right now, Wuthering Waves is treating its story like Marvel movie releases, and occasionally for a third act, we might get an Avengers moment where more than 2 main characters can interact together for the same scene for more than 5 minutes. So yeah, that's really it. It's gonna be really interesting to see what people think of this, but hey, I've been thinking this for a long time now, but we're getting it out there, right? I hope the second act is a lot better. But I'm still enjoying it. I actually just posted a Wuwa edit. So guys, I'm not a hater. I promise. I swear to God, look at my channel. I'm not a hater of Wuwa. I want it to be good. I just don't want this to be glossed over. But then again, I think Chris made this decision, so it's kind of how it is. Anyway, I appreciate y'all. See you guys later. Peace.
Twitch.tv/Captain Cabinetz, Captain Cabinetz.